This is Mike McMaster from the Wood County Museum, and today is the fourth installment of Black Swamp Stories. The history of the Black Swamp was not the mud in the water, it was the people. Now, the history of Wood County in Northwest Ohio was forged in war. There were great men such as Tecumseh and Pontiac, William Henry Harrison, General Anthony Wayne, and today we are going to talk about the last Indian War of Wood County, or was it? Now, the two principal men in this story are the man on the right of your screen, William Henry Harrison. We remember him in Wood County as the man, the hero of the War of 1812. He built Fort Meigs, saved Ohio during the war. And the man on the left, that is a painting by George Catlin, Chief Blackhawk. Now, if you know Chief Blackhawk, you might think to yourself, what does he have to do with Wood County? Now, I was an art teacher at one time and I chose the background carefully. That is a painting by William Trost Richards of a huckleberry bog. Huckleberries were a plant that grew in the bogs and barrens of Wood County. Now, Black Hawk was a war leader of the Sauk tribe. He sat for a painting, the one there by George Catlin in 1832. Now, Black Hawk spent most of his days along the Mississippi River near Wisconsin, in the southern part of the Mississippi River, and the star clear to the right. That is where we are in Wood County. And you say to yourself, what does he have to do with Wood County? Now, before William Henry Harrison was the hero of the War of 1812, he was the governor of the Northwest Territory after Ohio became a state. And before he was a hero, he was a villain among the Native Americans. The United States wanted the shaded in area, the land between the Illinois and the Mississippi River. William Henry Harrison found a random chief, showered him with gifts, and got him to sign the Treaty of St. Louis, giving that shaded in area to the United States. And war leaders like Black Hawk thought that that treaty was invalid because the people who signed the treaty did not speak for everyone. Where else did William Henry Harrison do this but in the Treaty of Fort Wayne? William Henry Harrison got random Native American leaders to sign the Treaty of Fort Wayne in 1809, giving a large piece of the Wabash area to the United States. People like Tecumseh, up at the top left corner of your screen, were incensed that those men who signed the treaty did not speak for all the Native Americans. And this bout came to blows between William Henry Harrison as governor in Vincennes, Indiana, and Tecumseh. While Tecumseh was away, William Henry Harrison attacked Prophetstown at the Battle of Tippecanoe in 1811, which destroyed Tecumseh's life work. Now, the War of 1812 begins between the British and the United States. Where Black Hawk was, there were no British soldiers, but there were British traders. Black Hawk was given a commission as a general in the British Army and told to go to war with the United States. Together, Black Hawk and Tecumseh were at the siege of Fort Meigs. And as we know, Fort Meigs was never surrendered. William Henry Harrison becomes the great hero. Tecumseh is killed at the Battle of the Thames River. Black Hawk, suffering many casualties, goes back to the Mississippi and Illinois River areas. The Native Americans in Wood County were removed about 1835, and the War of 1812 was the last war between the Indians and the settlers in Wood County. Or was it? This is the Huckleberry War of 1814. 1832. But before we know more about this war, we must first figure out what is a huckleberry. Above is another painting, Charles Eaton, showing a huckleberry bog. There were bogs and barrens in Wood County, and in England, a huckleberry were often called hurtleberries or bilberries or whortleberries. In the United States, it was like a blueberry growing on a bush. There were several varieties that would have grown where we are in the Great Lakes of North America. Now, Thomas Howard, Revolutionary War veteran, and his two sons, Edward and Robert, moved to Wood County as early pioneers. Edward Howard's son is Dresden Howard, and they moved to Ottawa Township, which is today Grand Rapids Township. They settle where the town of Gilead, later becoming Grand Rapids, is. Across the river from them, still in Wood County at the time, was the Ottawa Reserve Kinjoino's Village, which might have had over 1,000 people living in it. Now, Edward Howard built this inn, the Edward Howard Inn. He ran it from 1832 to 1835. This inn sat where about the Maumee River Bridge crossing from Lucas to Wood County into Grand Rapids is today. Now, where does this story come from? It is written down several different places. Each place is a little bit different than the other. I believe that all of these accounts were written by that man, newspaperman Charles Evers. First, in the historical and biographical record of Wood County, and later in his pioneer scrapbook. And my job, if putting this program together, is look at the three sources and put the best story together. And this is how the Huckleberry War begins. In the year 1832, young Ottawa women were out collecting huckleberries. It is interesting to note that Hester Purdy in the year 1810 wrote in her diary an account of how the Native Americans collected this important food source. She wrote, "It was amusing to see the women, the Indian women, gathering. They would hold a kettle or a pan under the bushes and beat the berries off with a stick." As these young women were collecting huckleberries in the bogs of barrens of Wood County, they were surprised by two of Black Hawk's warriors. These two men are actually Black Hawk's warriors, also painted by George Catlin in that same year. They became frightened and ran back to the Ottawa Reserve. As the story goes, they told the residents of the Ottawa Reserve that Black Hawk was on his way with his warriors to kill the Ottawas and the settlers on the Maumee River, which frightened the Ottawas, and they scattered in every direction. Now, the pioneers living in Gilead, the Howards, saw this great commotion of the Ottawas packing their belongings and fleeing, and they held a council. And the council that was held was made up of some of the principal men of that area: Peter Menard, John Hunt, George Knaggs, Edward Howard, Robert Forsyth, Indian agent, and among the chiefs, Kinjoino. They told these pioneer leaders of what the girls had seen collecting huckleberries. Now, the Edward Howard Inn was also referred to as the Stone House. Now, you cannot see any stones in this picture, but when Edward Howard built this house, he had built a room behind this building with walls of stone extending inside and holes big enough to put a rifle barrel through. It was, in essence, a fort in Wood County. Now, the pioneers did not necessarily trust the Ottawa. They demanded that some of the Ottawa women and children and wives be held at the stone house as hostages to ensure the good faith of the Ottawa, and they were probably fairly safe there. The word spread across the Maumee Valley and in Wood County, so frightening and alarming the pioneers that they hid and buried their property and began to flee. Now, of all the places they fled to, the Howard Inn, the stone mill at Otsego, and if you look at number 6 in Henry County, the stone mill at Damascus. Now, Reverend Isaac Van Tassel and the missionaries at the Indian Mission School also became alarmed. The story states that the missionaries and their families packed their belongings into a boat and anchored it in the middle of the Maumee River, ready to fly at a moment's notice of danger. Now, the story concludes in Damascus, the stone mill in Henry County, as the pioneers of Henry County, frightened in the stone mill, were keeping guard. A horseman with feathers and war paint galloped into the center of the Maumee River, whooping and hollering. The frightened settlers hollered out, "Who comes there?" And the man answered, "No wash," which they instantly recognized as Guy Nearing, a pioneer of the Maumee Valley. And Guy Nearing was writing to all of these places where the pioneers were held up, telling them that this was nothing more than a false alarm and a hoax, and that Black Hawk and his warriors were not anywhere in the vicinity of Northwest Ohio. Guy Nearing later on would become one of the commissioners of Wood County. Now, was there a war? Yes. In April of 1832, Black Hawk's warriors left the Mississippi River. They crossed into the northwest corner of the state of Illinois. Among the Illinois militia was a very young Abraham Lincoln. Black Hawk's warriors were chased back to the Mississippi River. The war concluded in August of 1832 with a disaster for Black Hawk and his warriors. It was a real war for the people involved, but many, many miles from Northwest Ohio. That is the last slide that I have. I hope you enjoyed this story.